Hello, and welcome to Electrifying Growth, a podcast brought to you by Edison Partners. I'm Chris Sugden, managing partner here at Edison and your host. There are moments in a person or company's journey that are undeniably electric. The spark or sparks, if you will, that propel you or your company to new heights. With Electrifying Growth, we're here to have in-depth, real conversations with great leaders who have been there and done it before. Edison has been investing in high-growth technology companies for more than 35 years, and I have been here at Edison doing this investing piece for more than 20 years. We've led over 225 investments. We understand that it takes great leaders and visionaries to build market leaders. We are your support system, a CEO and management's entourage, if you will. Let's introduce this episode's guest. Today, on this episode of Electrifying Growth, we are really pleased to have Megan Glover, co-founder and CEO of 120 Water. 120 Water launched in 2016 as a direct-to-consumer lab testing kit solution. So literally sending consumers kits from their water utility to test their water. And the company has since grown into a category-leading platform that helps drinking water professionals across the country manage the drinking water compliance programs, which include infrastructure and water quality. Recognized for expertise and dedication to ensuring safe and accessible water for communities, Megan Glover has played a pivotal role in establishing 120 Water. Under her leadership, the company has thrived in delivering innovative technologies and comprehensive programs that streamline water testing processes, enabling organizations and municipalities to efficiently monitor and maintain water quality. Megan's commitment has been instrumental in shaping the trajectory of 120 Water, driving to the forefront of the industry in pursuit of safeguarding public health through reliable water quality management. Megan was also named by the Indiana Chamber of Commerce the Innovator of the Year, which we'll talk a little bit about on this episode. Well, once again, Megan Glover, welcome to this episode of the Electrifying Growth podcast. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me, Chris.
Absolutely. So I thought a little bit unconventionally, a lot of times on Electrifying Growth, we talk about, the journey, et cetera, which we'll get to, but I thought it was kind of neat. I was doing a little bit of research before this. There was something you said when I think it was the Indiana Chamber of Commerce named you Innovative Leader of the Year, which is pretty awesome. There's a YouTube video out there about you and your business. But what you said in that video was something like, and I'll quote, "I believe there was an opportunity, and it was finding the opportunity that was so clear in my head. I'm going to go ahead and go do this. I'm going to quit my job and never look back." And it was really the last part that got my attention. And I'm sure, as a host, I have lots to think about on that. And I have lots about sort of being a backer of people like yourself, entrepreneurs, but I'm going to quit my job and never look back. Can you peel that back a little bit? And what was the aha? Maybe it was not a moment. Maybe it was several moments. And then sort of how that related actually to turning sort of a passion for maybe doing good with water to what 120 Water is.
Yes. Thanks for bringing that up. That was quite an honor from the Indiana Chamber a year or so ago. So my background is not in water. I spent about 11 and a half years as a go-to-marketing executive here in Indiana, building out go-to-market functions for business-to-business software as a service companies across a number of different industries. MarTech, retail, both point of sale and inventory control, ed tech, and before quitting my day job, healthcare. I was obviously a student of the power of technology and what it can do for industries across verticals, and then what it actually takes to grow and scale a company from nothing. And I think what compelled me to quit my day job and start 120 Water is, as a go-to-market executive, I, never personally felt so convicted in a problem. I mean, MarTech is great. It's flashy, it's fun, it's sexy, but really waking up every day knowing that you're building something that is protecting public health and that will better my kids' kids and so on and so forth is pretty darn exciting to wake up to. And then I think professionally, I had never been in a market with tailwinds that were so evolving. Now, albeit slow, government does not move fast, but feeling as part of a market with an opportunity to actually be innovative because of all the tailwinds happening in the market.
I want to get to your story a little more and talk about the background, et cetera, and the difference between working in a company and being an entrepreneur. But the tailwinds, our listeners would have heard about the Flint, Michigan water crisis, and maybe in their town, because of that crisis, they asked some questions at the city council meeting. But and there's also lead, which was the Flint, but there's also this. I'll use a fancy acronym, but you'll help our audience understand what it is. But I think it's PFAS, but which is more of the plastics in the water, to keep it simple. But let me just talk about what exactly is going on, if you will. And I know not necessarily talk just about Flint, but what the big problem is out there, not just lead, I think.
Yeah. No, it's not. When we look at, drinking water as a category and then even water quality, to quote one of my favorite analysts, it's like the status quo is untenable. What I like to say is like water is one of those industries that they physically and literally can't go out of business. And so as we think about like these macro issues that are facing the industry, one, it's all analog. There's been little to zero digital transformation up until this point. There are more regulations than we've seen in the last 30 years, and they just keep piling on top of one another. There's not enough workforce to take that institutional knowledge and transfer it to the next person. And then you add climate change, sustainability goals on top of all of that. And so it's just all of this is kind of a pressure cooker for having to look to modernizing operations and systems to really scale and meet the demands of the market.
It does make sense. It's not only do we have lead in our water or plastics, but what's the condition of the infrastructure, right? Like we take for granted, we pull a faucet or turn a faucet or push the faucet up and the water comes out and it's clean.
Yeah.
But that's not the case everywhere. Certainly in this country, we're pretty lucky. But again, a little bit more on maybe a little bit what 120 Water does, but you get this aging sort of, as you said, population of people taking care of the utilities. And they know where literally the bodies or the pipes are buried. But talk a bit about how little maybe we know.
How it works. Yeah. Yeah. And therein lies actually why I quit my day job, Chris, because
There you go.
once we started working with these municipalities and they were using our products, our kits, and some very high level dashboarding to see where they were in the evolution of their programs. I started asking for their data sets like, hey, how can we manage this better? Because you're just sending me Excel. And literally that's how these are very large systems managing data, either not at all on Excel or legacy databases. And the problem is we don't really know the severity of the water quality issues because we're not really tracking them. And that's kind of where new regulation is going. It's putting the data management and the data transparency as a forcing function for utilities to start to manage their data differently, identify the materials in their infrastructure, come up with a plan to remediate and mitigate, and then at the end of the day, make sure that they have tools to give their consumers to make sure that they have access to clean drinking water.
Awesome. So you talked a little bit about your kind of, there lies the why I quit my job. What was it that gave you, if you will, I go back to kind of the founder story, the entrepreneurial story, where the confidence to say, I can do this, because it's not, just waking up one day and saying, I'm starting a business. What not only give you the confidence, but if you think back many years ago when you started this company, what was your biggest fear, concern, and was it valid or relevant?
Well, let's start with the confidence.
Yeah, the confidence.
I think the confidence was back to that point in the chamber, because I had exposure to different technologies and different industries. I thought I had a way to solve the problem, right? So for example, the very first product that we launched, which was our kits, like the B2C kits, we just reverse engineered the 23andMe business model, right? So I'm like, these are solved problems. I can apply this to water. Then when we started building software, I'm like, well, we've done this here in this industry. We just need to bring this into water. So if you think about the evolution of the business and what gave me the confidence, I'm like, I know it's possible because I've seen it done in other industries. It's just desperately lacking here in water. What I grossly underestimated was how hard it is to break into a new category when you're not from that category.
Yeah, you're literally an outsider coming to an industry. It's pretty insular.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. In all of the different areas. I'm a marketer, not an engineer. I am a female, not a 50-year-old male. I am bringing kind of edgy ways. I'm basically moving their cheese. I'm like, the way you guys are doing this is all wrong. This is how you should be doing it. So I grossly underestimated how difficult it would be to kind of break into an adjacent segment that's so closed.
So that sort of industry, the real, I guess, simple way to put it, everything takes longer than you think in entrepreneur world. Is that fair?
Yes.
You can also say more expensive, but I think we've proven the fact that it's not always money that saves businesses from problems in this world of overfunded businesses, which we'll talk about because you've been really efficient with your capital. I also think about your story and you're creating a business model that's not only sustainable and scalable, which means you have an opportunity to build a nice, really nice scalable business, but you are doing social good. And that was part of your founding story too. I've often said in my shop, if you have a double bottom line business, it can be really tough if you're letting the doing good wag the dog of making money. because you can sometimes get your priorities confused. But at the same time, if you're not doing good, you're not going to win any customers because the water's going to be clean and you got to know where the facilities are. So saying all that, how have you managed a business which literally has, the ability to do good, but also, do well and do good, if you will?
I mean, how we've managed it, and I think we've still got some ways to go, it's hiring that balance of people. And we didn't get it right up front because we jumped to, we need the people from industry, to come in and that's who we need to hire. Well, that was a mistake because there's this altruistic of why are we even charging money for this? We're here to do good and clean water. I'm like, no, actually, no, we're running a profitable business and we're trying to make money. So honestly, I think it's been trying to find the right persona or person to come in that has that balance, right? Likes getting up every day and supporting the mission, but by gosh, love building a company. Like
Yeah.
the stage you're at, understands that when the business does well from a profitability standpoint, everyone does well, customers included.
Yes.
And so it's just been honestly all about the balance of people.
Right. So if the business is healthy, we can actually make the water healthier is another way to think about that.
And we can innovate faster for our customers.
It's interesting. You talked earlier about these kits. To keep it simple, you would send kits to consumers on behalf of a local municipality or water utility or whatever, and consumers could then test their water.
Yes.
So we have a services model in a way,
Yes.
right? And then you talked about building software and technology. We found, in 20 plus years of doing this, it's not easy being both a services company and a software company. What are the challenges you sort of both solved, but continue to have as you kind of try to figure out how to do both well? That services and software where you don't have to do the same thing over and over again, but use technology to automate it.
Yes.
Just talk a bit about the both models, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah, the both models. One of the things we've learned is honestly to embrace the different business units. We have software and we manage that according to best practice SaaS metrics, right? We have our products where part of those are commodity and we are just managing P&L on that, right? We are just trying to manage the best price that we can get for those, knowing that there's probably a threshold, right? And then we do have a services component because the nature of their market, oftentimes this is the first piece of technology that they're used to buying. And so it's kind of why CRM for the first time, you generally outsource the data implementation to somebody else. So we do a lot of that. And so I think we're getting smarter about how do we manage each of those units independently according to their own, KPIs. And also evaluating those product lines and saying, yes, this makes sense for the business moving forward, or no, this doesn't, which we didn't historically do.
So part of your services and tech software model really has to do with it's complementary. We can help again, I use the utility or the municipality. The service component will help the software, work, and you'll do that for them because they don't have the expertise anyway.
Yes.
To keep it.
It is pure managed services.
That's the way we've seen it work the best, frankly, when the customer doesn't think you're doing something one-off, but it's going to benefit the ongoing. Turning attention to sort of more the entrepreneur turned CEO and begin to build a bigger company. Because it's one thing when you're full of people and you can kind of grab everybody in a moment's notice and get them all on the same page. As you thought about going from 1 to 5 to 10 and beyond people, how was your role as CEO, or maybe I should say as founder, changed? And how do you see it even changing in the future?
If you've ever played competitive sports, it is that same gut check of, okay, I'm going into the next league, right? Do I have the fundamentals or the skills? And am I willing to put the hustle in if I don't and practice to gear up for that next? And so that's how I've approached every single phase. Even in the founder thing, quitting the day job, I had to sit there and say, okay, am I okay if this fails? Because that's what's on the line. And, am I going to get my CMO career back if I fail at this? So I had to kind of say, okay, if I can pretend what the worst case scenario is, and I'm okay with that, then let's go. That's kind of gotten us through Series A. It's gotten us to knocking on profitability's door. And so now when I'm looking at growth, how could we truly put some fuel on the fire here and build a category leader in water? I think I'm right now going through that same exercise. But again, I can see it. I can kind of see where my skill sets are on the bus, where I need to hire around me because I don't have those skill sets at that phase. And I think that's critical, right? It's just kind of doing a gut check. It's, hey, where can I contribute? Where can I not? And let's fill in the gaps. Let's fill the seats around the table.
Well, it was often used a sports analogy, and I forgot it because I think you did play some sports as well. And so one of my favorite analogies actually is sports, and that actually goes to the coaching side. Whether it's Tiger Woods or Tom Brady or pick your favorite athlete, they all have coaches and at some level really respected what the coach can bring to the table. And yet these are the best of the best. But I often find CEOs and management teams not sort of thinking about the coaching personal development part themselves other than their own. So how have you tapped into others, whether it's mentorship, whether it's formal coaching? How have you utilized others to help you with some of those questions, if you will? And also, how do you think about doing that going forward?
I think it's healthy, no matter personally, professionally, whatever. I think constant coaching and mentorship is also very healthy. So I'm a big fan just in general of what we're talking about. I mean, absolutely mentorship. And whether that be folks that have been there, done that, or just even peer-to-peer mentorship. Indiana in general is a pretty tight-knit tech community. So I've had the opportunity to kind of not only grow up with peers, but also learn from a lot of great entrepreneurs here in Indiana that I rely on all the time. I've met some great folks in industry when we're trying to solve like industry market that I just pick up the phone. What am I missing here, right?
Yep.
And then obviously pulling in the formal coaching when I may not have the brain power or the tools and the other people do. So definitely, I think that's super important when you have to start building in more process, more people strategy, and just more strategy into your professional.
Founders, CEOs are moving so fast and they're supposed to be, Superman or Superwoman and have all the answers, but we all know that's not the case. And our success of kind of implementing coaching it's got to be someone you trust. You can sort of say, this is the way coaching gets done. I'm saying that as an investor in anyone's business, but you touched on mentorship because then that goes down a level as well. Have you actually formalized, either whether it's for management team or young people on your team, any kind of formalized mentoring program? And how do you see that evolving in the future if you haven't yet?
Oh, no. And I would love to. Like I said, I've benefited from it. It's certainly something that we encourage the folks that we know we want to develop or they're raising their hand. But we've invested externally with some coaching for folks, but it's not been systemized and put into the business yet. But I can't wait to get there.
Yeah, no, we get it. And it's one of those things that when are you big enough and how do you actually do it all? But it's a fair point to say there's a lot to do anyway. If we turn to culture, and I notice if we don't do video on these podcasts, but if we did, the folks that are listening in or watching would see respectfully push your boundaries or the boundaries over one shoulder and be accountable all the time on another. And I know we've got some other ones behind you, but I guess what I'm wondering is when you think about building your culture and also having been a CEO through a pandemic, which was of course turned the world upside down, words on a poster or behind us or on a screensaver is one thing, but living it every day is another. Pick out your favorite topic on culture. We'll take it for a few minutes, whether it's one or two of your values behind you, whether it's the culture in general. I do want to pick your brain a bit about the pandemic and the changes, that stuff. But how did you come to develop your culture and values, and how do you sort of live them, and how do you kind of make sure they stick, if you will?
I was adamant when we were going through this that values are not something that go on a wall. Because how many companies have we worked for that we put up our values on a wall and there we have values? These are actually handcrafted of who we want to be. We hire by them. We fire by them. We recheck and gut check performance against them. So it's actually something that's built into our culture. Like no one gets hired without understanding what these are, how these relate not only internally, but also externally with our customer base that we hold accountable to those values. And then we try to then reinforce that ceremoniously through the company. Like every quarter, we will have a peer nominated core values a winner. And then at the end, we have a Legends Award that's not only values based, but also contribution based for going above and beyond. So I think the net is we really try to infuse that in who we hire, how we manage to, and so on. And again, I use it against my customers as well. Like it's my job to respectfully push your boundaries.
And keep them accountable to they have some deadlines up too to make the system work, right? And sort of looking back at your background a bit, you have to look too far to see you're a mom.
Yep.
And a CEO, founder, so some would say mom's enough CEO of the house and CEO of the kids, a big job. And you are CEO of a business. And that was highlighted in that video I mentioned earlier as well. I sometimes think it's impossible to have it all. And then other people will challenge that and say, no, it is if you can find the right balance. How have you, I don't know if you'd say you have it all and how successful you've been. I guess really the question is on balance. How have you figured out, or you're still working on it,
Yeah.
that CEO and mom CEO, and of course, spouse, if you will, and
Yeah, right.
just the whole thing.
It's all of the hats.
Exactly.
Oh, it's never ending. I think it's a continuous thing. I think the first thing for folks that may be perfectionists like myself is what comes off. Right. I think at least starting 120, having worked like 10 years and being a little bit more confident in how I protect my time, how I use my time, how I manage that. And I am one that tend to blend it all together. So I'll probably be on a call at 7 o'clock because I have to pick up my kid at 5 and we have to go do
Yep.
something. Does that make sense?
Totally.
So that's how I found it works. I just blend the two, and my kids grew up coming to the office. My kids grew up stuffing boxes.
Love it.
But it is continuous gut check, because I think you can have it all if you figured out how to manage your time for it all.
Yep. The blend point is a good one because I think some people may challenge that, but everyone has to figure out it on their own. I remember my son, I think it was him, my oldest, once said, Dad, you have no S days. Well, because entrepreneurs don't, right? Saturdays and Sundays, they're days a week. And I'm sure your kids would probably say something similar because they see you all the time.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh,
Working,
always
being a
on.
mom.
Yeah.
Right. What advice would you give to another female entrepreneur that has children and has that balance? You gave a little bit of your own view, but what advice would you have for somebody?
Oh, I mean, I do think the culture of the company and the work environment does matter. I mean, I think we're finding a lot of success, again, giving enough flexibility so that you're not feeling like you're pulled in both directions. And what we found is actually in crunch time, people come fast and hard for that, right? I feel like when you're, I've been in those scenarios where if your butt's not in the seat at 7:30 and you're not the last one to leave at 8, then you didn't get your work done for the day. And that's a not sustainable, I think, work-life balance for anyone trying to actually be a participant raising a family and actually be a professional.
The fact that we've all figured out it's about getting the work done, not the time of day, helps a bit. I was, again, doing a little research, but you give a shout out to your mom, I think, as a bit of an inspiration, and maybe more than a bit, but reflect a bit on somewhere in your background growing up, some DNA got programmed in to have we talked a little bit about starting the business and this moment to quit. But as a kid, what did you see from your parents as role models to sort of giving you the confidence to start a company?
My parents are both attorneys, so they would actually look at you and say, she's crazy. They thought I was crazy that I didn't go to law school. In fact, they would pull my husband aside. I was probably year 5 into startup scale up, and they're like, I mean, is she okay? Like, why does she keep joining these companies that are just like burning money?
Of course, you said, Mom and Dad, the world doesn't need more attorneys, right?
Right. We got AI for that. Don't worry. But I will tell you, like my mom, so she graduated from Indiana University and she was one of 5 women in her law school. And
Wow.
she went on to be the only partner in her law firm in Northern Indiana. And so, I mean, I saw firsthand how hard she worked to get that seat. And she is very, very respected in her field of estate and tax. And so nationally and in Indiana. So I think there was a little bit of that DNA. Mom would go away and I knew exactly what she did, and she'd take me to the office and I'd sit in her chair in her office. And so I think that definitely did have an effect on me and my ability to be like, yeah, I can do this.
Those little things do matter, don't they?
Yes.
So picture that hopefully there aren't many of these, but I know in running a small company, there are more of these than you'd care to remember, folks that are good. Been a tough day. Some customer got angry at you. Maybe you didn't win a deal. Just whatever it was.
Yeah.
Something didn't go great. What is it keeps you, coming back for more? Because let's face it, entrepreneurship is about overcoming adversity. It's not really the wins, because there's going to be some of those too, but it's taking no for an answer when you're the little company and have to get to sell the big one.
Yeah.
Is there a quote? Is it inspiration? Is it just taking time out and going, let's focus on the big picture? What did you do to keep yourself going, moving forward when it's been a tough day?
Okay, well, it depends on how tough a day it's been.
How many drinks does it take? No, I'm kidding.
One thing I have learned is I don't react. I'm a processor, especially the more complex the thing, the more time I just need to sit and reflect. And again, it goes back to how bad is this? And if you can't overcome it and solve it, like that's the ideal scenario, right? You solve the customer's problem, they become a happy customer again, and rah, rah, let's go. But there's also been some problems that we solved that actually really suck. It's like that loss really sucks and they are irrecoverable. But do we still believe in the greater vision, the strategy, the people? And that's what keeps me going, right? I continuously check in. Do I still believe in the vision? Do I still believe in the people? Do you still believe in your customers and the market you're in? And that's been enough for me to overcome those days.
The way I try to say sometimes to CEOs I work with, I have the pleasure to work with, as a board member, et cetera, this can really be a roller coaster ride, but the trick is not letting the highs be too high, the lows be too low, right? To your point, I'm not very good at that, by the way. So I'll try and take a page out of the book, which is breathe a little and don't react right away.
It's not linear too. There's the end goal here. And again, I know back to the sports, but it's like, we're just still training. We're training for the Super Bowl. And if you feel like you are waking up every day going to the Super Bowl, then you're not in the right mentality to actually be on the stage, be in the stage of a company.
Right. Because there's always more.
There's always more. There's always more.
So what do you know now that you wish you had known then? And that's a way to share with other CEOs, not so much about the water business, specifically water, or maybe say it differently. What do you wish you had known then that you know now?
Yes. So I wish I would have known how important it is when you are forming your first board. To your point, always raise more money and hire a CFO as soon as you can.
Let's hit those two for a minute. Board. And I know because you have a current board, so we're not talking bad or good about it.
Right.
But what do you mean by getting the board right? Like, what is it that not so much went wrong, but how would you say to somebody who hasn't had a board yet? What would you tell them to do if they're thinking about forming a board for the first time?
Well, I mean, just run references to ground. And also, what are your expectations of the board? And what are their expectations of the board? And if they are not aligned, it's going to be painful.
Yes, that's good. Alignment, setting expectations, clear communication. It's so often taken for granted. Oh, I'm on a board. What do I do? Well, a lot of people end up being on boards the first time and no one told them. CFO. So it's funny because there's that CEO I backed many years ago who was an accounting major. And he's like, Chris, I got it. I'm a controller. It's good. And after he exited, he said the first thing I would do is go hire a great CFO. And, Sugden would badger me about that. It's funny because I think in little companies, CFOs get taken for granted, like they must just keep the books. So what is it about the CFO role that now you appreciate more maybe than you did 5 years ago or so when you were, getting going?
I think having worked with great CFOs, they are just so doggone good about peeking around the corner on things that you may not be thinking about when you're just trying to put one foot in front of the other, right? And I just think directionally, it would have given us a 1 + 1 = 3 sooner, in my opinion, if we would have invested in that sooner. And we wouldn't have had to actually waste so much money trying to figure some things out.
Discipline, forecasting. No, it's really good. And it's interesting that I think a lot of entrepreneurs go through that same reaction. Maybe give me one on employees or team building or give our audience one.
Wow.
If I knew then what I know now about hiring or team building or adding employees.
Well, if I would have known starting this company that we would be basically 100% distributed workforce right now, I would have hired a very different team in 2019.
Interesting. Obviously, every CEO had just this living through managing a pandemic. And all of a sudden, whether you're remote before or not, world still changed. Would you say on remote work, on distributed workforce, is there a tip or two that works for you? Because I don't think you were fully distributed, if I remember right.
We're still figuring that out. And it's the number one question I'm asking other peers of mine right now, especially as we're doing like modeling out into the future. I'm like, hey, are you modeling office space yet? Because I'm thinking about it. It just goes down to communication, and you have to all sing from the same songbook. I'm not saying we are great at it, but I mean, we try very hard to say the same thing 7 times and across 7 different channels with the hopes of it's going to reach the lowest contributor in the organization, but it is really hard. And we're trying also to figure out how do we even measure performance in a way that we haven't had to think about pre-COVID and so on. Just communications and figuring out that right internal communication plan that makes everyone feel like they're on the same page.
They're part of it. Well, if it's maybe cold comfort, and because we have 50 plus or minus active companies, and I think you got less than 10%, but certainly less than 20% feel like they've really nailed it.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting. And these are companies that could range from a small 30 and as many as several thousand. And none of them would say it's nailed. And I think some would argue remote's better and it's great. And others are going to go, hell no, when you get in the office, we've lost our culture and collaboration. And and everything in between. So this is going to be interesting, right? Because it seems like every Labor Day for the last few years, it's like, what's going to go on with going back to the office? So it's one of those topics that I feel like we're going to spend a little more time with our CEOs over the next several months, how, more sharing. There's not a one size fits all. So someone has a good idea, share it quickly. Advice. Last question. You got a CEO comes knocking on your door for some mentorship. And frankly, let's put ourselves in a female CEO role, because I think it is still an underserved market of tech CEOs that are female. It just is.
Mm-hmm.
What do you tell that person? Just what sticks out as advice, maybe either you got from somebody else that you want to pass along, or advice you want to make sure you give if you pay it forward?
I think definitely getting into that mental mindset of you're running a marathon. I mean, not a sprint, right? Even though inherently as entrepreneurs, we want to sprint, that's not practical in most scenarios. So just understanding what you're getting yourself into. Find a peer group that can be your advocates. I will tell you, I have found some incredible female mentors that I can say single-handedly, like, you're why I was able to raise my Series A, right?
That's awesome. That's awesome.
And
yeah, there are people out there to share, right? Don't sort of assume you need to be in it alone.
No, you don't have to. Exactly. You're not in it alone. Seek out those relationships and just mentally prepare and get excited for the journey.
Well, it's been a real pleasure, Megan. We've known you and your company for several years. We know there's a lot more to the journey. We're going to do a part 2 to this, because hopefully as we continue our conversations with your company, we really admire what you've built. There's a lot of figuring it out in an industry that didn't have a lot of tech, and still doesn't when you really think about where the water utility industry is and the water industry is. But you are doing well and doing good, which is awesome. And so really admire your story. Thank you for spending time with us today here on the Electrifying Growth podcast.
Yeah, it's been wonderful. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining this episode of Electrifying Growth. A special thanks to this week's guest for sharing their time and insight. For more resources, inspiration, and a look inside the Edison Partners Network, sign up for our newsletter at www.edisonpartners.com. Click on the Stay in the Know button in the top right corner of our webpage. Thank you again.